Welcome to my review of Streets of Rage for the Sega Genesis. I had originally beaten this game on Sega CD back in the early 90s, so many fucking years ago, but I'd never technically beaten the Genesis version since I didn't own the actual cartridge. It's the same thing as the Sega CD one as far as I can tell, aside from not having a two-player mode in the Sega CD version, but I believe the game is pretty much identical, difficulty-wise and layout. But I just wanted to beat this version just to get it on my Genesis kill list, officially, to build that list. So I did a tutorial of this recently. It was a 1cc tutorial where I didn't lose any continues. So I mastered the game pretty well on normal. There was definitely some parts that I could have refined, but overall pretty decently. So I have a tutorial of that up, and I'll link that in the description. So as far as the art style of this game, the visuals, and the music is some of the best on the system, some of the best in gaming. So all that is top notch. But in my reviews, I really focus on gameplay, so that's what I'm going to be breaking down. So in this game, this game inspired a lot of beat 'em ups. I mean, as far as it wasn't, I wouldn't say it was innovative. I mean, you had games like Final Fight already that had grappling mechanics where you could throw enemies and do stuff like that, but I still feel like it pushed it forward in a lot of ways because it was just so tight. The control was just so tight. It just played so well. I think, after this game came out, a lot of beat 'em ups probably got better just trying to imitate this. The decent imitators anyway, but this game is pretty simple as far as the controls. There is no running attacks or run. So it's more of a basic beat 'em up than some later games. You have your weapons that you can pick up that do pretty good damage, knock the enemies back usually. You have health pickups that give you some of your health back. You have limited continues and lives to beat, the difficulty modes, and it goes up to hardest difficulty setting. So here I'm playing on normal. And you have your usual bosses at the end of each stage, as you would expect. Now, the game does recycle a lot of bosses again and again. You will be fighting bosses over and over again. They will appear throughout various stages again. And at one part, you have to fight two bosses at the same time, which is quite difficult. It's the two claw bosses at the same time. And that's one of the tougher parts. You can also call in these police cars by pressing A. You can pick up police car items that give you extra uses of the item, but it's rare. And usually I'll have one to use per life. So if you die, you'll get another recharge of it. So it's usually better to use it before you die. So you can get it in and get the damage in. But the police car will do heavy damage to bosses and clear all the enemies on screen usually. If not, it'll do huge damage to them. So it's kind of something you call in for emergencies. You can't use it in the final stage for whatever reason. The police car can't drive inside the final boss's mansion. But it can drive on boats inside industrial complexes and, shit like that with no problem. But it's just not allowed in the, it must be, really good security at the front of the mansion. So, yeah, those are the basics. You can also, all the characters in this game have infinite combos, which is not really part of something that would be listed in the manual, but it's just the way the game works. So, if you delay your punches, if you punch a few times and delay and then punch a few times again, you will be able to do infinite combos on pretty much all the enemies in the game. Now, for the bosses, you can do it too, but it has to be modified. It's not as straightforward as what you do on the regular enemies. But the game is very exploitable for that reason. And it's definitely a flaw in the game, I would say. It makes it a lot easier to exploit. So here you see me calling in the police car. And you can see this is where there's the double bosses, where you have to fight two of the claw bosses at once. And it's one of the harder boss fights. So I usually save up two of my police cars for this part to try to minimize any lives lost on this part. But yeah, pretty much all the bosses, aside from the final boss, can be locked into infinite combos, which is really a major exploit. And it makes all the boss fights, easy aside from the fact that there's minions and shit that get in the way and will interrupt you. So that's really the only challenge for the boss fights. Aside from the last boss can be tricky. But really the last boss is only hard because of the minions yet again. I think that's what makes it, tough. The minions can be pretty relentless. Now in this fight there's no minions, it's just two of the bosses at once, which is pretty tough. There's also another hard boss fight with two women that flip over you. And you have to, it's really not that bad once you learn how to do it, but it can be a pain in the ass and take some practice for sure. But at least in that fight, it's not spamming an infinite combo like you can do on most of the bosses. So, I think it's good that at least it's something different. You can't just exploit it like all the other bosses. But yeah, overall, this is like, the combat in this game is, of course, very good. It just plays very tight, very well. And you can throw enemies, for crowd control. And then on this stage, it's good to throw the enemies off the elevator whenever possible. Try to, eliminate them immediately. There's a decent little variety of enemies, but it's not, it's not a huge variety, but there's a decent variety of enemies. But you fight a lot of them in a similar way, so there's not a lot of variety in how you change the way you're playing the game. So it's kind of limited, in that sense that there's not a lot of variety with the combat. And, most of the bosses, you can get them in infinite combos, like I said, so it does kind of trivialize a lot of the bosses. You have 3 playable characters as well, and the differences between them are really not massive. But I liked Blaze because she was the fastest, and she apparently does the least amount of damage as all the other characters, but I didn't really notice it because of the speed that, you get the extra speed, you can really maneuver a lot better. And with the infinite combo that she has and all the other characters have, you can group the enemies together and just infinite combo them. You see me infinite comboing this guy. This is one of the bosses that you have to fight again. Now, when you can get him alone, if you get your positioning just right, I found you can lock him into an infinite combo like that. But of course, it's a lot trickier to do than it is on the regular enemies, which is very simple to do. But all the bosses, you have to do the infinite combo. A little bit different on each boss. And it's not really what I would call an infinite combo on some of them. Like, there's a running guy that'll keep running into your fist. You see this guy, I'll show this now. But this is not really an infinite combo because you see he's breaking loose and coming back. And occasionally, if you don't time it right, he will break through and knock you over. So, maybe I shouldn't call that an infinite combo. But basically what I'm trying to say is that you can get the bosses into these easy loops where they can't really get out easily. That's what I should say. But for all the other enemies, aside from this boss fight here with these 2 women, which you fight twice in the game, this one is the only really challenging boss fight as far as having to do something different. And the final boss is also difficult too, but like I said, I think it's mainly because of the minions. There's a lot of minions constantly rushing you while you're trying to deal with the boss. But once you get this fight down, you can dance around this fight pretty easily without taking too much damage. But it is hard initially to get it down. At the final boss scene here, you can make a decision if you want to join him or not. If you choose to join him, you'll get sent back to stage 6 and have to replay all that. So it's better not to choose that option. I believe if you have 2 players, if you're playing on 2 players and you select to join him, I believe. I'm not sure what option you have to choose, but there is an option where you have to fight the other player and kill the other player to beat the game, which is kind of interesting. It's been done before in games like the original Double Dragon did it. But it's still kind of a unique mechanic that's not done too often in most games. I believe Pit Fighter also did that. But this boss fight can be tough because the minions are constantly rushing you and they're fast. So the boss itself is really not that bad to deal with if you can just deal with him alone. But most of the time you're going to have minions rushing you, so you have to try to get them off your ass. And you can see this was a 1cc run, 1 credit. I didn't use any continues, but you can see how close it came. I didn't practice this boss fight nearly enough. So, I wasn't really going for a 1cc. It just worked out that way. So I didn't have this practice down as much as I should have. Because I figured, I had enough lives that I could just kind of muscle my way through at the end. I wasn't going for a 1cc, but I ended up doing better than expected. But yeah, overall, this is a very solid beat-em-up, gameplay-wise. Like I said, the music and art style is some of the best on the system. But as far as the game, I would give it a 7 out of 10. I think it's a good, solid beat-em-up. But it's very much outdone by games like Streets of Rage 2 and other beat-em-ups that came later. I would say even Streets of Rage 3, even though I don't like it as much, I think it's a better game because of the gameplay. The core gameplay is much better with all the moves you have in Streets of Rage 3, with being able to do running attacks and all these different attacks. It's much improved gameplay-wise. Still, I enjoy this game more than the third one, as far as a fun game to play. But part of that is also the atmosphere as well. And it is well balanced. You know what I mean? Enemies don't take a shit ton of hits, and you don't stay on one screen for far too long like Streets of Rage 3. But yeah, overall, I think this is a good beat 'em up, and it was very strong at the time, and it really encouraged a lot of future beat 'em ups. So if you have any questions, let me know, and thanks for watching.